The date is 3 September 1944, about 1300 hours. One Gruppe of Jagdgeschwader 26 is evacuating Grimbergen, an airfield north of Brussels that they had occupied for only 5 days. It was the 7th field that they had operated from since the Allied invasion at Normandy 3 months earlier. JG-26 had transferred eastward through France and Belgium and were now moving back to Germany. Patton's Third Army is sweeping east, almost without opposition at this time. Ground attacks on the American spearheads, using rockets and strafing, were the highest priority for JG-26. Heavy anti-aircraft fire was encountered during those operations. The Geschwader transfer flights began about midday. The Stab and the First Gruppe headed for Krefeld, and the Second Gruppe to Kirchhellen via Dusseldorf. Most flights were uneventful. 2 were intercepted, though, with disastrous consequences. A new officer-trained pilot, Lieutenant Karl-Heinz Ossenkopf, who had been with the Gruppe less than 2 weeks, was flying as wingman to Unteroffizier Dusing. The second Staffel was the last to take off from Grimbergen at about 1300. All ground staff, but the second Staffel ground crewmen, were already on the road, out of touch with higher authority. The weather was ideal, 8 to 10 kilometers visibility with 8/10 cloud cover at 800 meters. The plan was for the aircraft to take off to the west, make a broad left turn, and head east at 1500 meters. Ossenkopf's landing gear would not retract, and he and Dusing were still turning south of the field while Ossenkopf worked with his gear lever, when they saw between 6 and 8 P-51s pass 200 meters overhead, firing at the last Focke-Wulfs in front of them. Ossenkopf jerked his aircraft to the left and crossed behind the P-51s, dropped his flaps, and prepared to land quickly. Three kilometers to the east he could see 4 crashes, and the P-51s climbing away. Ossenkopf taxied directly into a hangar in the 2nd Staffel dispersal area, just ahead of 2 strafing P-51s, which did not see him. He jumped into a truck with the Oberwerkmeister, the line chief, and 3 armed men, and the 5 of them headed for the crash sites. The Luftwaffe men had to force their way past a column of retreating infantrymen, but reached the first site within 5 minutes. The Focke-Wulf was in flames, ammunition was exploding, and the smell of burning fuel, oil, rubber, and flesh assaulted the men's noses as they circled the plane looking for a way through the smoke. The canopy was off, and the pilot's headless corpse sat burning in the cockpit. The airplane's Verkehrsnummer was still visible on the tail. The line chief consulted the list and said, "Herr Leutnant, That is Unteroffizier Bucke. Herbert Bucke was beyond help, and the two men returned to the truck and headed for the other sites. The line chief noted the location of Bucke's crash in his diary. The next pile of smoking wreckage was only 600 meters away. Belgian civilians beckoned the men into a nearby house. There lay Unteroffizier Leo Dumbrava. He had been able to bail out of his aircraft, but his leg had been shot through with a .50 caliber projectile. His injury was not life-threatening, but the civilians urged Ossenkopf to take Dumbrava away immediately. The lieutenant and the Oberwerkmeister decided to end the search and return to the field. Dumbrava accompanied them in the truck, crying in pain. The 55th had been one of the 8th Air Force's first two Lightning groups. It had recently re-equipped with Mustangs. That morning, it had escorted heavy bombers to Ludwigshafen. On the way home, two squadrons broke escort to look for trouble in the Low Countries. Captain Macaulay Clark, a flight leader in the 38th Squadron, spotted activity on the deck from 10,000 feet and led his flight down, followed by his squadron commander's flight. The Mustang's 400-mile-per-hour dive to the deck caused their windshields to frost. They made a broad arc to reduce speed and clear their canopies. And then came in behind the Focke-Wulfs, whose pilots had still not seen them. Captain Clark was first across the airfield. He hit his target from dead astern, and its pilot bailed out. Clark's flight members then downed two more FW-190s in flames, and his squadron CO claimed the fourth. Ossenkopf's fighter had been jacked up in his absence, and the landing gear found to be functional. Its circuit breaker had been jarred open, and Ossenkopf hadn't noticed. Had he been able to raise his gear, he would have been the last in the formation, and thus the P-51's first victim. The Stab from 2 JG-26 gets ready for takeoff at Melsbroek. Melsbroek is northeast of Brussels. Hauptmann Lung, the Gruppencommander's 190, had been giving trouble, and the aircraft of his Stab took off last at 1320. The 35-year-old Lung was a former Lufthansa pilot who claimed 159 victories with JG-54, mostly on the Eastern Front, and an additional 14 victories with JG-26 on the Western Front, beginning on 28 June 1944. Lung was the pilot who claimed 18 Russian aircraft shot down in a single day over 3 sorties. From Donald Caldwell, according to the casualty reports, and Josip Prilla's 1956 Geschwader history, they flew in a single Kette, a group of 3 planes. Lung's two companions were supposed to be his longtime wingman, Lieutenant Alfred Gross, and a promising Nachwuchs, Unteroffizier Hans Joachim Boruck. Author Donald Caldwell proposes there were two Ketten, not one, with Lung and Boruck in the first Kette and Gross leading the second. Lung had had problems getting his landing gear up after takeoff. But 10 minutes later, they were on course at an altitude of only 200 meters. Lung asked that an experienced formation leader from 3 JG-54 be brought to join him to fly in his Stabsschwarm. Lieutenant Alfred Gross arrived 2 months after Lung, on 27 August 1944. At age 24, Gross had 50 victory claims in just a 9-month period, mostly with 3 JG-54. Caldwell noted, "A records search shows Mustangs of the 55th Fighter Group's 338th Squadron were flying a few minutes behind the 38th at 9,000 feet. After the 38th called out 190s on the deck near Brussels, the commander of the 338th led his unit down. As he broke out of the cloud at 3,000 feet, he saw 3 to 6 bogies flying a loose formation heading east, balls out on the deck. Boruck called out thunderbolts to their rear. Lung broke upward to the left, Gross straight left. Boruck dived with 2 fighters on his tail. The squadron commander started after the Focke-Wulf on the right. After taking hits in the wing and engine, Boruck broke hard left and somehow avoided his pursuers. Lieutenant Darrell Kramer, the squadron leader's wingman, took the one on the left, which rolled in a steep left turn and then back to the right. Kramer's speed was much greater than the Germans, and he was able to take a high-angle deflection shot at the Focke-Wulf, while he himself was turning right. Kramer broke up and then hard right again and saw the FW-190, which was upside down in a steep dive to the ground. It hit so hard it generated shock waves along the ground like a rock thrown into a pond. The airplane skidded a few yards, shedding bits and pieces, then blew up in a fireball. According to Caldwell, Lieutenant Kramer's victim was undoubtedly Hauptmann Lung. Kramer's squadron CO also claimed an FW-190, and another was fired upon by Hermann Schonenberg, who last saw his fighter in a dive at 100 feet, but didn't see it crash. From the UK National Archives, Record and Summary of Events, Limp Airfield, 11:30. Squadron briefed by Flight Lieutenant Spencer for another show of 8 aircraft, this time a Ranger, an armed Rekka, reconnaissance, to Liège, with the object of clobbering any Huns. 8 aircraft took off at 12:35 with 90-gallon tins. French coast crossed at 12:50 and set course for Liège. At Brussels, large concentrations of transports were seen on roads leading to the town. These were not attacked. Probably Allied. Liège was reached at 13:25, course then being set for home sweet home. Black 3 reported more transport on the roads. Black 1, on investigating, saw 3 aircraft going east below at about 2,500 feet. These were identified as FW-190s, and an astern attack was made on them. The enemy aircraft broke and, in the ensuing fight, 2 190s were shot down by Lieutenant Spencer and Warrant Officer Coleman. Our casualties were Warrant Officer Chatton, missing, believed to have bailed out, and 3 holes in Flight Lieutenant Spencer's kite. Combat took place at 13:30 at Terre-le-Monde, and course was set for base again at 13:35. 7 aircraft returned to base and landed at 14:45. Gross's report, filed from the hospital, states that he first broke into the attackers and shot 1 Spitfire down. That claim was unverified. He saw Lung's 190 diving in flames and then zoomed upward. Peter Chatton was buried in a grave at Geel, Belgium, with the grave marked 3 September 1944. Gross's plane was hit by an unseen fighter and he bailed out, badly injured. He never returned to JG-26, but survived the war. From Donald Caldwell, if there were indeed 2 Ketten, the fiction that there was just one was an early German attempt to rationalize Gross's hospital statement that he was next to Lung when Lung crashed. It is likely that Lung pulled his Ketta up into the cloud deck when the P-51s were seen approaching, and he was too embarrassed to admit that he had abandoned his Kommandeur to his fate. Gross's Ketta was spotted by the Spitfire pilots just above the thin cloud layer. Boruck could see little as his canopy had oiled over, but did spot Lung's aircraft in a vertical dive to the ground, its gear extended. Boruck made a forced landing at another Belgian airfield. Boruck reached Dusseldorf locked into the baggage compartment of an FW-190 from another unit. His dramatic arrival, followed by his announcement of Lung's death, left the gathered pilots of the second Gruppe in shock. Lung had brought great success to his unit with superb leadership, and now he was dead after scoring 173 victories in 403 combat sorties. With this piece of news, JG-26's 4-year tour of duty in occupied Western Europe came to an end.